Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining this year's International Euphonium Summit. I'm your host, Nicholas Hofter Heidi with Farm for Dreams, and we have a very special guest, as all our guest artists and conductors, composers alike come to give you the best information of their life. And if there's extra stuff like in the transcripts and the recordings below that you can hear on the podcast and stuff like that, go ahead and go jump over to that. But as far as this, I present you Algirdas Matonis. Amazing, amazing, amazing individual. Got to share a significant conversation beforehand. Well,
Hey, thanks for having me, Nicholas. It's looking forward to this. Should be a pretty cool interview. We had a chance to talk quite a bit before this, so looking forward into diving into more specific euphonium questions.
right. Well, let's just start with for this episode of this minuet. Let's start with your story with euphonium.
All right, so
When did you start your music career?
yep. I get this question asked quite frequently. Hey, why did you pick euphonium? And the answer is nobody picks euphonium. Euphonium picks you.
Uh huh.
So, and it's usually how we start that. So, when I was 7 years old, I was looking for an after-school class activity, and there was a bunch of activity organizers and directors coming out to our school and handing out leaflets. And um, originally, I gathered quite a few. And originally, I wanted to go to a choir because they're telling all the kids that we travel quite a bit to other countries, and I wanted to travel when I was a kid. I wanted to see places. So I got back home and I showed all the leaflets to my parents, and then said, "Hey, Dad, I would like to join the choir." And my dad looked at the leaflet, and then he saw the address of the rehearsal space, and it was like on the other side of the city. And then he saw the leaflet for the band, which was like a block away. So he was like, "Hey, I think you would really enjoy the band way more than choir." So I was like, "Really? Okay, fair enough. Dad knows best." So we decided to go with the band, and then they scheduled a meeting, and I was originally supposed to show up. Can't remember exact time because it was such a long time ago. But my dad got stuck at work, and here's the usual story. We come in, all the instruments are handed out to all the kids, and nothing's left. And there's this old band director, and he was like an old there whatever stereotypes you have for Eastern European teachers, that's that. But a great guy, but very rough, like very straightforward, very stoic, had that very like scary, deep, aggressive sounding voice. But he was like, "Oh, we got the baritone left there. You want to try the baritone?" I was like, "Okay, I'll try the baritone." So, and I grabbed this, and they used to call it baritone. It's a German style baritone. So
The
basically,
Wagner.
yeah, I've heard many different names. Tenor horns. Some people say it. It's although it's not exactly tenor horn.
Right.
Some people call it a Wagner tuba. Like some people call it German style euphonium or baritone or whatever. So, but he gave me one of those, and I got back home. The next session, we had a meeting with that band director, and he gave us a paper piece of music with all the scales and thirds, and he basically
Wow.
said, "Well, the very first lesson, by the way, he goes like, for next week." You need to learn all the scales and thirds. Whoever comes in unprepared, you're kicked out of the class. So I kid you not, that's exactly how it went. So it's those people, and sometimes I get, uh, I do that as well a little bit. Sometimes the jokes and people in that region, the jokes, people keep the stoic and serious face, so you never know when they're joking, when they're being serious. So I got back home and I really started practicing. So we kind of had a finger chart. I started practicing that treble clef C major. Everyone does treble clef for euphoniums or baritones in Lithuania and most of the European countries. So a concert B flat scale or treble clef C scale. And I started practicing that. We lived in like an apartment. Neighbors were like banging the walls because they were like so annoyed with me practicing. And I finally managed to, within like a like 6th or 7th day of practice, get close to like figuring out that C major scale in one octave in thirds. And I went to that second lesson like all petrified, and I remember before the class, because I did not learn all the other scales. I knew that one, and I went to that guy, the teacher, before the class, and I said, I'm so sorry. Like I worked so hard. It's just like I could not learn. I've only learned that one scale. And he was like, you learned that one scale? I was like, yeah, only one. And he was like, play it to me. And I played it, and then he said, look at this. This is how you're supposed to, like, he made like a point to all the other students, like, this is how you're supposed to like practice. And I felt very good. Kind of, oh, I like that. It was like, I like praises. Oh, okay. I like that. I want more of that. So it was not that, oh, I love the instrument, or I really enjoyed playing. It's just like I liked getting praises. That was pretty cool. So I worked quite a bit, and then he would start giving me praises in the concerts, like in the parents' meeting. It's like, oh, and he used to call me so you know how you have like Steven, and you have like Stevie, or for like you have like these like
Names,
yeah, but you would use it for like kids, or like
yeah.
Johnny for like a kid. So they would have like Algirdas would be the full Lithuanian pronunciation. Algirdas would be would be the what you would call like a kid. Like, so he would call me that, and he would like make me stand up and like in front of parents, and like, that's a great student right there. He's working. So basically just having that connection of being good at something. Kids, like, you're not gonna find a lot of kids who just instantly fall in love with like either a sport or something. But most kids, they want to be good, and once you realize that you can be good at something, that's one of the most empowering thing, like especially in a kid's mind, that realizing, oh, I can actually like do this. It's weird. I want to do more of that. So I became quite obsessed with practicing, and that started going pretty well. And basically, that's how I started playing. So I was always raised with that mindset that whatever you're going to do, my dad used to always use the comparison of you can be a shoemaker, but if you choose to be a shoemaker, you need to be the best shoemaker there is. Like, so when I was like a teenager, like that's when I started, like 12, 13, 14, I started really thinking of what do I want to do in my career as I'm finishing the high school. And I wasn't sure if I want to do music, but there's that one thing that was always stuck in my mind. What am I like best at? Like, what can I be best at? And metrically, like the competitions that I enter, I would win the first places and so on with playing. So it's not like I particularly, like as I mentioned before this interview, I was never into the classical music all that much. There was never like a music on my choice. I enjoyed the rock music. The I used to listen to Metallica all the time. I used to be obsessed with those guys. So, but the instrument that I was good at and developing competence at, was that tenor horn, or the euphonium, that German style baritone, whatever you want to call it. So at that point, I'm like, I'm not exactly enjoying the classical music, because that's the only music where you get to play on the instrument, but I feel like that's the area where I have an opportunity to be best at. So I kind of Googled what's the best euphonium player, what's the best place to study. Like, I think I was 13 or 14. And as we were like driving after class with my parents, when I was like, again, 13 or 14, I kind of told my parents that, hey, mom, there's like this place in Manchester, like Royal Northern College of Music. I'd love to go there. And my parents thought I was like crazy, and so on. But I really set myself like in terms of a mindset to, that's the place where I want to go, and that's the place where I'm going to become the best euphonium player in the world. And 5 years later, long behold, I'm at the Royal Northern College of Music. I'm starting my undergraduate, my first year of the undergraduate. So basically, I decided that that was the place where I could get the best type of knowledge, best with some of the most known euphonium players and tutors, and that's where my next 5 years went to, is United Kingdom, in Manchester at the Royal Northern College of Music. later on, as I was going towards my second and third year of the undergraduate, the question of how I'm going to make a living out of it became a really important aspect of my playing. And I had a chance to visit United States in 2014. I believe that was the third year of my undergraduate, and it really opened up my eyes in terms of the like business and work opportunities for me to get from playing euphonium. And I started doing more research and trying to figure out maybe avenues for me to move to United States, because I saw that as a real opportunity for me to go to the next level in terms of my developing as a musician and a career. And so happens that the same year I won this big international competition, which gave me a tour as a part of a prize as a guest soloist with the River City Brass Band and in Pittsburgh. And I flew there in 2015, or it was 2014 October. And I met Lance LeDuc. I met James Gourlay, and they kind of, I explained the story. I showed my playing abilities. I expressed my goals, and they helped me set up with postgraduate studies at Carnegie Mellon University, and later on job opportunities at the River City Brass. So, and since then, I've been in the United States developing my music career, my playing career, and all the social media stuff that goes along with. So that's a long story short. Not sure if that's exactly short, but as short as I could make it.
So I kind of want to dive back into your first set of years with your dad and the support. I know, he suggested band because it was right down the road, but as far as his support during your first years and those practicing times, what, like, did he find that the neighbors were too annoyed with you practicing?
It wasn't just the neighbors, it was everyone. Because it's I used to like that's how it works. When you practice, you're not particularly sounding all that great and interesting and pleasant to listen to. I remember there's this moment in the summertime where I had this neighbor, and I was practicing my arbin or whatever, and I can hear somebody yelling outside, Algirdas, Algirdas, and I felt like I misheard. But then I realized, and I just opened up my window a little bit wider, and I see my neighbor, and he goes, "Hey, Algirdas, it's cool and all that you play and practice, and I don't mind that, but for once, could you just play something nice? It's always those scales and stuff. Could you just play something beautiful for once?" I was like, "Oh, cool." So, but regardless, yeah, my brother used to get annoyed because he wouldn't be able to get his daytime naps, because I was practicing all the time. Like I was after school. It's been practicing. Neighbors, I'm sure, like later on, once we moved out to the house, that became a lesser problem. But imagine living in like an apartment,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to, even if it's daytime, imagine somebody just going dun 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 for like 2 hours straight, trying to figure that out. It could probably drive you mad. So yeah, some of the neighbors were not too pleasant. And to be fair, like my, I grew up in a pretty I would consider it somewhat especially by American standards, a traditional family. So my dad, you wouldn't hear all that many praises from the dad, and my dad was always he's a pragmatic person. He was always very, very intelligent and smart, but the way he analyzes life and the way he always looks at stuff, he always looks in terms of the new ventures or every decision that you make, he always looks from the side, what are all the cons and what's the worst thing that can happen, and then I'm gonna make sure I'm dealing with those. He would never look at the positives, or he's very orientated
Realistic.
into. So our relationship with my dad was always my biggest arch nemesis. So like, I'm just gonna stick it into this guy's face, because he was like, you better, everyone's like attorney or a lawyer in my family. And Like you need to do this. It's like music, yeah, good, it's cool and all that, and we're proud of you, but make sure the school, you need to be good at school. I've never heard them say you need to be great at music, but they used to always say you need to be great at school. That's the main thing. They used to be preoccupied, and used to really, really sit poorly with me because I was like, hey, I'm like winning these competitions here. And they're like, oh yeah, congratulations. Good. We appreciate it. And I was like, I'm gonna stick it to this guy. I'm gonna become so good. And it was so it's like I said, it's weird. It's not the traditional where, hey, I fell in love with music. I fell in love with the instrument. It's just, hey, you raised me with the mindset that I need to be best at one thing, and hey, now you're paying the price because that's the thing I'm best at, and that's the journey I'm gonna take. And he was always bringing the points that, hey, if you choose to be like an attorney, there's gonna be all this help from me here. If you stay here, you go do music, how are you gonna make money? And I used to always, and it got to the point where I'm a very argumentative person, very opinionated. I listen to opinions of other people, but once I make up my mind, I'm gonna go with that. And he was bringing all these things, and he used to annoy me because like, hey, why don't you bring like all the good stuff, like all the, hey, you put so many years into practice and so on. So we had this weird, like I did not get along very well with my dad. We get along very well now. I've developed a lot of respect and appreciation because my dad was always the worst critic, and he was like, but running through all those issues and the problem, almost every step of the way, almost everything that he said proved to be correct. So I kind of caught myself in this situation where I'm not going to let him win, but he's kind of correct. So I kind of had to overcompensate by either creating financial opportunities or overworking but
Or
yeah,
both.
it was a weird relationship. I always say like it's hard to be motivated from happiness and ease and all the most people, like when it comes to athletes and musicians, there's usually some sort of a darker side of what, because it's, look, you're waking up every day and you're practicing these long hours to win a lottery. That's how it works. You're and you think that you have better chance of winning the lottery when the guy next to you. That's literally the mindset that you're into, and it usually comes from not always like, oh, I'm having this happy, great life. I'm always like very joyful what I do. I was pissed off. That's how I basically started my music. It always was the thing that was motivating me to wake up and practice and be better. And it might not be a conventional story that you hear, but just being 100% real here. It's just that was the motivating thing. I just really, really, really wanted to stick it to all the people who said, no, it's too late for you. It's like waste of time. Later on, funny enough, as I got older, I fell in love with the music way more as I became more mature. I kind of told you that a little bit in the previous
Mhm.
conversation that we had, that where when I started to understand music better, it started bringing me way more joy in terms of playing it and so on. But most of the time, it was just proving. If somebody tells me I cannot do it, it's like, well, I'm gonna prove you wrong, whether for good or bad. But that's just I guess the way my brain works. So that's the story.
Well, that's really awesome. I can't wait to dive into that next round where you started to talk about when you came over and you were kind of under the tutelage of Lance Leduc and got to meet James Gorley and really you know taking that next step in that enjoyment of music that you had. Um, I find it very fascinating that the vulnerability of not only yourself but other artists that are that share these stories and their journey with us is that you know our original motivations tend to find their reality once everything is settled, when in a way when the dust settles, like we just heard from Algirdas and his relationship with his dad, or um, talking about other relationships with other artists. You know, the original motivations can provide a good foundation if it's done the right way, or if you really work at it just in spite of a feeling or this. We really You really covered it in before we hit the record button, is the whole idea of
Being detached from. So yeah, basically what I said before we started this interview, that uh, one of the best advice I would give for young players is to become competent. Focus on just bettering yourself. You can think of it however you want to approach it. You think of a real live game where you're leveling up yourself, right? So except for investing time into like a video game, invest time in leveling yourself up in terms of learning how to communicate. Just get competent in one thing in your life. Just get really, really competent in one thing. And if you manage to get competent at something, along the way, you're going to learn a variety of skills that will allow you to pick up and become competent in the other things. And one of those things is being able to work and being productive, detached of your emotions, whether you're
angry.
tired, whether you want to work or you don't work to work, whether you're motivated, doesn't matter. You just learn how to get things done. So when you're a kid, your brain does not operate like that. Most kids are very emotion driven, and it's just, so in order to get there, you usually starts with some sort of an event that motivates you, or somebody that motivates you.
Right.
It's almost like a lot of us have been there if we've been like dumped by our girlfriend or had like a bad relationship. The next thing we go, gym, let that out, better ourselves. It's always some sort of it rarely comes from like, oh, I'm in a fantastic place, I'm having a great time, let me go invest all my time grinding, working, and all that stuff. So but as you get better at it, it becomes like practicing an ability to work, ability to stay focused, ability to absorb hours, workloads, and becomes detached from your emotions. So it got to the point where you can only stay angry and motivated and pissed off or whatever for so long. At some point that goes away, and it's the question is, can it be functional for you? Are you okay waking up and doing your job, whether you're tired, or whether, and there would be like months where I really don't want to do it, and you feel burned out playing your phone. Look, I've been playing the instrument on daily basis for like over 2 decades. Like I could tell you that, oh, I'm just like, that's the love of my life, the instrument. It's always like love and joy. No, it doesn't work like that all the time. There's many months or weeks out of a year where I really don't feel like doing it, and it doesn't matter. You wake up because you developed an ability, a competency, and something where you don't need to be like, it's always what I compare is, sometimes you don't want to eat, or you don't want to drink food, or drink water, or eat
Right.
food or whatever, but and sometimes you really want to, and it's like delicious, and it's just like a ritual. You get it done, and it's just like a part of it will be very awkward. It'll feel very awkward for me. I wouldn't be able to sleep well if I didn't get my practice and my work done. I get that, and my brain recognizes, all right, I got my stuff done today. So that's a part of developing competency.
So
If you take that journey, that's one of the skills you absolutely will have to acquire, whether it's competency in athletics, music performance, computer science. You're gonna have to develop ability to work disregarding your emotions or separate work, and that's one of the most powerful things, the most valuable skill that you'll ever develop in your lifetime, in my opinion.
well, I mean, taking that to the next level is your original band director, and that goal he set, like he firmly established in your mind, is that goal of you have to learn all these scales or
Yep.
you're out.
Yep.
I don't hear any music program at any level doing that nowadays. In the
Yeah, we live in a very different time where being nice is more valued than being productive, or and if that's it's again, it's based on people. I'm not saying that it's wrong or right. It's based on where we are. I never take that mindset, and I'm trying to be honest. It's never a popular opinion, but I never see, I rub shoulders with some of the most successful like brass musicians, and one thing like all of them share, they don't go easy on themselves. If they don't do their work, they feel like they don't feel good, they feel bad. If they're very aggressive with their career goals, they're very aggressive with their work ethic. They don't take time off all that often. Very aggressive mindset. But often it's hard to tell that to people because that's not something a lot of people want to hear. And if you're trying to get customers, you want to be nice and you want to motivate them, but it's not always their realities. I always say it's a bit of a journey, but just I'm going to give you the best advice from my personal standpoint, in my opinion. You can get just no matter what, just get confident. And I know I'm repeating myself, but just get confident in one thing, and you'll see what it takes and where it takes you. Even if you choose a different career field or different thing,
Right.
I never want to surround myself with people who tell me to take it easy, or take a day off. I want a person who's going to be next to me, who's going to go like, yeah, I understand, suck it up, go get. And again, those are not always the nicest people, but just to give you an example, my dad, you would never go like, you never hear him saying, great job, you've made it. You always go like, he'll always find, but yeah, but that could have been better, or this could have. And it was like my biggest arch nemesis there. And now again, he was never my friend. Now he's my friend, but when we were growing up, he was never my friend. He was just a yes or no man. He was like, either you got approved, and that's, I guess, one of the things that helped me develop that mindset. But it's in my opinion, that's very important. If you want to get really really good at this, you're going to be competing with people who have this mindset. You need to be able to get there. I never had a mindset of, oh, I want to become as good as that player. I always wanted to get better than that player. And a lot of people don't like hearing that. But me personally, if I had a student who said, I want to be better than you, that to me is like, that's the guy or the girl.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, come in here. I would never get like offended. I'm just, I guess, the way I'm processing, or the way I prefer communicating. So.
Right. It's, in this life, my personal stance is kind of a reflection of that, is being able to offer something like this. But if someone can come along down the road and do it way better than me, great. Go ahead, do it. And I mean, that's a goal as a teacher, is to have your student become better than you are.
Yeah, but that's always a good type of competition. I always like good competition. You can compete two ways. You can compete by making yourself better, or by
Hmm.
making sure that nobody else becomes as good as you, like making sure that they don't get to that point. And one of them is a very healthy way of competing, and the other one is not a healthy way of competing. I always say I try to be transparent as much as possible, like not always the nicest thing maybe in nowadays to say I'm being very honest often, but I feel like I'm being quite real with these things.
Hmm.
I sit around in this industry, all the people who made it, we share the same qualities. They're very 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 aggressive with how they approach their own progress, their own journey, their own practice. They're very capable of detaching themselves from, I feel tired, I feel this. They don't always say this, which again, it's your choice how you want to approach communication with your students and so on, but that's just the reality. Try to establish, if you're a young student or upcoming player and you go meet a teacher, try to establish as quickly, maybe it's not going to be as direct as, hey, just be straightforward with me, but try to establish the relationship, or hint, or establish some sort of way to indicate that, hey, you can be 100% transparent with me, with not being afraid that you're going to like offend me, or anything like that. And that the educational system in America is very different than educational system in Europe, whereas in America students have way more leverage because they are the customer. So
Hmm.
you're trying to satisfy the customer, and they pay a lot of money to get that education, whereas Europe, it's vice versa in terms of the power balances, whereas the professor is almighty, and they can say or do whatever you want to say or do. Well, not whatever, but you get where I'm
Right.
heading with this. I feel like the nice balance in between is probably where you want to be. When I moved to United States, one of Lance is one of the nicest people. You will not find a person who is going to speak poorly of Lance, because he's one of those people. Everyone likes Lance. He's a nice guy. Everyone knows him as a nice guy. One of the first things that I did is establish that, hey, you don't need to be nice with me, just like I want, like as transparent, direct type of conversations and advice. I don't need you to necessarily, although he still does that. He's a very compassionate person, but I don't need you to uh, tell
Sugarcoat.
me, like I don't need somebody to tell me, oh, I feel for you or whatever. I'm only solutions orientated. Either you give me advice that helps me to get from point A or point B to point B, but or the other stuff is not exactly like necessarily helping. So I try to establish with him as early as possible that I'm interested in just very direct type of conversations. And you could he communicated with me quite a bit differently than I would assume he would communicate with some other students. But I always advise young people, try to establish that as quickly as possible. It's not always the most pleasant things, because truth and reality hurts the most. When somebody says something that's really true in terms of criticism, you it's just right there, you feel it. It's you get that, but if you can handle that, which a lot of musicians can, because you're used to criticism, that's where you make real progress, and that's where you can make a good decisions in terms of your playing and career and all that stuff. So
So it's really interesting is, showcasing all these artists and conductors and composers is being able to see their passion, their motivations, their beginnings, and how they conduct themselves, just like him, and being able to know, like, if you're at the junior level or high school senior, and you want to continue euphonium studies. You haven't found an instructor yet, but you're syncing up and you understand where he's coming from, and this is the type of style that you would love, to that realness, just like every other studio that has come on here. Is I want you to see and understand these particular facets, these ideas, these frameworks and mind shifts that each of these amazing euphonium artists brings to the table, to your table, whether you're a parent or a student. Algirdas is a really amazing professional, and is different than all the other ones. Every single person has their own identity, their own way of approaching teaching, and the execution of that, and how they hold themselves. And if that's the drive that you feel like you need, or maybe disregarding emotion, you need, and you don't want to admit it, drop a link below and let them know that you're interested, or send them an email or send them a message, and reach out to them, especially in seeing if you want to continue this relationship as a teacher student, and even going
study
above.
with me.
Right, exactly. Seton Hill.
Plugging in Seton Hill University, reach
Right.
out, come study with me.
Or drop, like,
Yeah,
who knows when they'll be able to see this, as far as when this is 10, 20 years down the road.
yep.
Find one of his, like, if he's for some reason out of the game, which it doesn't sound like he'll ever be out of the game, to be all honest. I mean, find one of these students that have studied with Algirdas, or with any of our other amazing artists. Find that legacy of, that mindset that they've inseminated and talked to and taught these other students. Find them. They're out there. You just got to search. And the best way is drop a link below. Ask a question. Hey, is Algirdas still around? Where is he? It's going to be on the page. And if it just so happens not to be, Someone will find
I'm
it.
hoping I'm gonna be around.
Oh,
So
I know. I'm talking to like the future generations
yeah,
who are going to
yeah,
be seeing this. Like, I'm
yeah.
talking like, if
I'm not I'm hoping unless it's like
yeah,
future
I'm
I'm
talking about 60 plus years.
should
I'm
be
talking.
I should be there hopefully for a couple of years to,
Well, I'm not talking a couple years. Yeah,
yeah.
if you're interested in going up to Seton Hill and searching that out, by all means. And then in addition to that, stopping by his website. It's all linked below. Uh, Amazing, really resource that we have, especially for sight reading. If you've listened to the podcast, even the fuller extended versions with our earlier guest artists and composers, I talk about sight reading, and that's a great resource for sight reading
Yep.
because you're not going to get that same. Uh, oh man, there's so much to go into that, and if you want to know more about that, just leave a link below and/or go back to the transcripts or the full length podcast to this 2+ hour interview overall for just this one. Um, and subscribe to follow up into the next minuet. I know this was a little bit longer than the 10 to 15 minutes I considered doing these, but that's what happens, life. And we're
Yeah.
musicians and we get to share our passions
I
and
talk way
purpose.
too much.
Nah, no, we have too much coffee in us.
Yep, yep. I drank all the coffee. Now I'm talking like I'm talking way too long, too much.
No, it's not. It's not. And,
Yeah.
for us to share what we do, there's always someone who's willing to put that additional time in to listen to what we have to say and offer up because that helps them get ahead of that next person or even to become a better person themselves. And that's my whole drive is if I can help one person to become the best of who they are today, tomorrow, the future for their family, that's a win for me.
Yep.
And so, with that being said, thank you all for stopping by and subscribing and following us in our journey on this International Euphonium Summit for this year and continuing the segment of this journey for Algirdas going forward and seeing how all this unfolds. Stay tuned. We've got some amazing stuff in his life and all the other journeys that have really been part of the foundation elements of growing the International Euphonium Summit to where it is even today. We've got 30 interviews as of this interview. Go back, listen, submit your email address, get those transcripts, and really dive deep. We got some really great information in all of these, especially Algirdas' interview here. Some really amazing business stuff that was not on this particular video recording. Some really, really, really good stuff. Really valuable. So thank you so much for joining us today, Algirdas.
My
And
pleasure.
being willing to be vulnerable and showcasing your raw, your your rawness, even though it's much caffeinated, like
Yeah.
mine.
Yep, yep. Being real here, caffeinated and real. That's
Caffeinated,
the name
real,
for the podcast. Caffeinated and real. How about that?
right? So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining this. If you know someone who needs this information, please share this out to them. If you know someone who is solution oriented, who is approval based, a go getter, loves those praises to know that what they do matters. Send them this video, send them this interview, and get them hooked up into the right place. If you're a band director, has those go getter attitude instrumentalists. This doesn't have to necessarily be a euphonium player. However, we're both euphonium players, and this is our love and passion. If we get to produce this for other euphonium players, all the better. But this really transcends the euphonium world, what we're doing here. So thanks for stopping by. Everybody, thank you.